Let me introduce myself. My name is Claire, and I used to be the backbone of a company that didn't know how much it needed me until it was too late. Well, maybe they still don't know. It's funny, or maybe not so funny, how life has a way of teaching lessons in the most brutal ways possible. But let me back up for a moment, because this story isn't just about revenge or justice. It's about what happens when people forget their humanity in pursuit of profit. I worked at Arcadia Tech Solutions, a mid-sized IT firm with big dreams but questionable ethics. To say I loved my job would be an understatement. I lived for it. Every day felt like solving another puzzle. Every challenge an opportunity to prove myself again. The backup system? That was my baby. From scratch, I built it into something reliable, something unshakable. They called it the fortress behind closed doors, though no one ever said it to my face. Still, I knew it was true because nothing had crashed under my watch, not once in 6 years. 6 years of sleepless nights, endless troubleshooting, and relentless dedication. And then, one Friday afternoon, everything changed. They fired me, just like that. No warning, no negotiation, no acknowledgement of the blood, sweat, and tears I'd poured into keeping their precious data safe. 1 minute, I was walking into a meeting thinking we were going over quarterly reports, and the next, I was being handed a severance package thicker than any report I'd ever written. Funny thing about those packages, they always come wrapped in lies disguised as gratitude. We appreciate your contributions, they said. This decision wasn't personal, they assured me. Yeah, right. Personal? Try catastrophic. The irony hit me almost immediately. Not only did they fire me, but they also decided to replace me with some off-the-shelf software solution. A cheap knockoff designed by some kid fresh out of college who probably thought Python was just a snake. I wanted to scream, to tell them they were making the biggest mistake of their corporate lives. But instead, I kept quiet. Dignity, they call it. Pride, I guess. Whatever you want to name it, it burned deep inside me as I packed up my desk while everyone pretended not to notice. Some coworkers gave me sympathetic smiles. Others avoided eye contact altogether. None of them stopped what they were doing long enough to ask why. Why now? Why me? As I left the building for the last time, holding a box filled with trinkets and memories, I couldn't help but feel like I was being pushed out of a plane without a parachute. Except worse, because at least falling from the sky would have been quick. This was slow torture, knowing exactly how bad things could get and having no power to stop it. Because here's the kicker, I own the backup system. Literally. By owned, I mean I understood its quirks better than anyone else on the planet. I knew which servers ran hot, which ones liked to hiccup during peak hours, and which files were secretly corrupted but hiding it well. I knew where the skeletons were buried, metaphorically speaking. And more importantly, I knew what would happen if someone tried to tamper with it without consulting me first. 16 minutes later, everything crashed. Okay, maybe I should clarify. It wasn't exactly 16 minutes. It was closer to 18, but who's counting? What matters is that the timing couldn't have been more poetic. 18 minutes after security escorted me out of the building. Alarms started blaring across Arcadia's headquarters. Emails stopped sending. Databases went offline. Entire departments ground to a halt. Chaos erupted faster than anyone could react. Phones rang nonstop. Fingers pointed wildly, and executives scrambled to figure out what went wrong. Meanwhile, I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching the chaos unfold through the rearview mirror. You see, I didn't sabotage anything, at least not intentionally. At least not yet. The crash was inevitable, predictable even. When you build something as intricate as that backup system, you leave little breadcrumbs along the way. Little fail-safes, hidden triggers, safeguards designed to protect against human error, or in this case, human greed. Let's just say I hadn't exactly documented all of them before leaving. Whoops. Back to the present moment, though. As I watched the pandemonium from afar, a strange mix of emotions swirled inside me. Satisfaction. Definitely. Anger. Absolutely. But there was also sadness, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. Sadness for the people who depended on that system. The interns trying to meet deadlines, the sales reps losing client information, the developers whose code was suddenly inaccessible. These weren't bad people for the most part. They were caught in the crossfire of corporate politics, victims of decisions made far above their pay grade. And yet, here they were, suffering because of choices they likely didn't agree with. Still, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for the higher-ups. Oh no. Those suits deserved every ounce of panic they were experiencing. They thought they could cut corners, save a few bucks, and replace me with a glorified script. They underestimated me, and now they were paying the price. But this wasn't about money. This was about respect, or rather the lack thereof. Respect for hard work, for expertise, for loyalty. Loyalty, ha! The word almost made me laugh out loud. After 6 years of giving my all, I got tossed aside like yesterday's trash. If anything, this whole debacle was a lesson, one they desperately needed to learn. By the time I finally drove away from the parking lot, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city skyline. My phone buzzed incessantly with missed calls and messages, but I ignored them, let them stew for a while, let them realize just how much they screwed up. I didn't owe them anything, not anymore. All I owed was to myself, to the years I spent building something extraordinary only to have it ripped away. But here's the thing, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Firing me might have been their first mistake, but letting the system crash was their second. And trust me, they were about to make plenty more. Because while they were busy panicking and scrambling for solutions, I was already 2 steps ahead. Revenge? Maybe. Justice? Probably. Either way, I wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, I found myself oscillating between anger and clarity. On one hand, I was furious at the injustice of it all, furious at how disposable they made me feel. On the other hand, I was eerily calm, almost serene. For the first time in years, I wasn't beholden to anyone. No deadlines, no meetings, no expectations. Just freedom, and a plan slowly taking shape in my mind. Freedom, however, came with its own set of challenges. Bills didn't stop coming just because I lost my job. Rent, groceries, utilities, all of it loomed large over my newfound independence. I dipped into my savings reluctantly, knowing I couldn't live off them forever. Job hunting crossed my mind, but the thought of starting over somewhere new felt hollow, like settling for less after giving so much. Besides, I couldn't shake the feeling that my story with Arcadia wasn't finished. Something told me I wasn't ready to walk away completely. In the meantime, I kept tabs on the situation. News traveled fast in tech circles, especially when a company as prominent as Arcadia experienced a major outage. Industry blogs dissected the incident, speculating about causes and consequences. Former colleagues reached out, some apologetic, others accusatory. A few hinted that upper management was blaming me for the crash, claiming I must have tampered with the system before leaving. The audacity of it made my blood boil. Blame the person who created the system rather than admit their own incompetence? Classic. Despite the mounting pressure, I resisted the urge to intervene. Let them struggle. Let them realize how irreplaceable I truly was. Each passing day brought new complications for Arcadia. Lost revenue, damaged reputation, frustrated clients threatening lawsuits. Rumors circulated about potential layoffs, budget cuts, and even bankruptcy. Watching from the sidelines, I felt conflicted. Part of me relished their downfall, but another part worried about the innocent employees caught in the fallout. Was I becoming the villain in my own story? Then came the email. Late one night, as I scrolled through social media updates and news articles, a notification popped up on my laptop. It was from Greg, the head of IT operations at Arcadia. We'd never been close. He was one of the many middle managers who nodded politely in the hallway but never bothered to learn my name, but his tone was desperate. Claire, we need your help. Things are spiraling out of control, and no one knows how to fix it. Please, can we talk? For a moment, I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Here it was, the moment I'd half expected, half dreaded. They wanted me back, not out of kindness or recognition, but out of sheer desperation. Pride whispered that I should delete the message, ignore it, let them squirm a little longer. But curiosity won out. Against my better judgment, I typed a reply, "Meet me tomorrow morning. Bring coffee." The next day, Greg showed up looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled suit, and a nervous twitch in his left hand gave him away. He slid a cup of coffee across the table toward me, his expression equal parts hopeful and terrified. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, fidgeting with his tie. "I know we messed up. Big time. But we're drowning here, and we don't know what else to do." I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the silence as he squirmed. Finally, I spoke. You fired me. You replaced me with a glorified script. Now you're begging for my help. Do you really think it's that simple? He flinched, but didn't argue. Instead, he launched into a rambling explanation of everything that had gone wrong since my departure. The new system failed spectacularly within hours, exposing critical vulnerabilities no one anticipated. Data corruption spread like wildfire, rendering entire sectors unusable. Clients demanded answers, competitors seized opportunities, and internal morale plummeted. Worst of all, attempts to restore the old system only made things worse, triggering cascading failures that left Arcadia teetering on the brink of collapse. Listening to him, I felt a pang of sympathy for the employees, not for the executives. Ordinary people were paying the price for decisions made in boardrooms far removed from reality. Yet, beneath the sympathy lurked a simmering rage. How dare they treat me like expendable labor, only to crawl back when things fell apart? Did they honestly believe I'd forgive and forget just like that? When Greg finished talking, he leaned forward, pleading. Please, Claire, we'll make it worth your while. Whatever you want, money, title, whatever, it's yours. Just help us fix this. I set my coffee cup down and met his gaze squarely. It's not about money, I said quietly. And it's definitely not about titles. If I agree to help you, it's because I choose to, not because you're offering me scraps. Understand? He nodded vigorously, relief washing over his face. But I wasn't done. There's one condition, I added. No interference. You let me handle this my way, or we don't do this at all. Greg hesitated briefly before nodding again. Deal. With that, I agreed to step back into the chaos I'd once called home. But this time, things would be different. This time, I wouldn't be the invisible force holding everything together. This time they'd see me, and they'd remember why they shouldn't have let me go in the first place. Walking into Arcadia's offices felt surreal. Everything looked the same. The rows of cubicles, the hum of computers, the faint scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. But the atmosphere was palpably different. Tension hung heavy, like storm clouds waiting to burst. Employees moved cautiously, whispering among themselves, their eyes darting toward me with a mix of hope and apprehension. Word of my return had spread quickly, and I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Greg introduced me to a small team tasked with assisting me, though I suspected their real purpose was to keep tabs on me. Fine, let them watch. They'd soon learn that I didn't need babysitters, I needed results. My first order of business was assessing the damage. Hours turned into days as I pored over logs, diagnostics, and error reports, piecing together the tangled web of failures. It was like unraveling a knot that had been tightened beyond recognition. Every discovery revealed another layer of incompetence, another reminder of why this disaster happened in the first place. The deeper I dug, the angrier I became. Not just at the executives who greenlit the replacement system, but at the culture that allowed such negligence to thrive. Arcadia prided itself on innovation, yet its leadership valued shortcuts over substance. They prioritized cost-cutting measures over quality, sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gains. And now the cracks were showing everywhere. Despite my frustration, I focused on the task at hand. Slowly but surely, I began implementing fixes, some temporary, others permanent. I worked tirelessly, often skipping meals and losing track of time. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, but adrenaline kept me going. With each successful repair, I regained a sliver of control, a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about saving Arcadia anymore. It was about proving a point to them, to myself, and to anyone else who doubted my worth. Of course, not everyone welcomed my presence with open arms. Whispers followed me wherever I went, some admiring, others resentful. A few colleagues accused me of gloating, of enjoying their misery. Others defended me, pointing out that none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired in the first place. The tension simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Meanwhile, the executives tiptoed around me, careful not to provoke further ire. They offered vague apologies and promises of reform, but their words rang hollow. Actions spoke louder, and so far, their actions screamed hypocrisy. Still, I held my ground, refusing to engage unless absolutely necessary. My focus remained on the work, on rebuilding what they'd broken. As progress continued, I found myself reflecting on the nature of loyalty and betrayal. Arcadia had betrayed me, yes, but in doing so, they'd forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about myself. Was I staying purely out of spite, or was there something more driving me? Did I genuinely care about fixing this mess, or was I simply seeking validation? The answers eluded me, slipping through my fingers like sand. One evening, as I stayed late to troubleshoot a particularly stubborn issue, Greg appeared unexpectedly. He carried 2 cups of coffee, offering one to me with a sheepish smile. "Thought you could use this," he said, sitting down beside me. "Thanks," I replied, accepting the drink gratefully. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft clatter of keys and the distant hum of machinery. "You know," Greg began hesitantly, "a lot of us never agreed with what happened. Firing you, I mean. We knew how valuable you were, even if they didn't." I glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Then why didn't anyone speak up?" I asked, my tone sharper than intended. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Fear, mostly. Speaking out against upper management doesn't exactly win you friends around here. Plus, we figured you'd land on your feet. Someone with your skills? You'd bounce back in no time." His words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. People had stood by silently, letting fear dictate their actions. And maybe I had expected too much, assuming others would fight battles I couldn't fight myself. Maybe we were all complicit in our own ways. "I'm not saying it's an excuse," Greg added quickly, misinterpreting my silence. "Just context, I guess." I nodded, sipping my coffee thoughtfully. Forgiveness wasn't easy, nor was it guaranteed. But understanding? That was a start. As the days turned into weeks, momentum shifted, progress accelerated, and the tide began to turn in Arcadia's favor. Systems stabilized, data recovered, and confidence slowly returned. Clients expressed cautious optimism, and employees dared to hope again. Through it all, I remained a constant presence, guiding the recovery effort with precision and determination. Yet, amidst the triumphs, questions lingered. What would happen once the crisis passed? Would Arcadia revert to its old ways, forgetting the lessons learned in the heat of disaster? Or would they embrace change, fostering a culture that valued expertise and integrity over expediency? Only time would tell. For now, though, I focused on the present. Each line of code repaired, each server restored, brought me closer to closure, closer to deciding whether I belonged here or somewhere else entirely. The day finally came when the last server was back online, the final corrupted file restored. Arcadia wasn't just limping along anymore, it was running smoothly, almost as if nothing had happened. Almost. The scars of the crash were still fresh in everyone's minds, a quiet reminder of how close they'd come to total collapse. Greg called an emergency meeting with the executive team, insisting I be present. When we walked into the conference room, the air was thick with tension. The same people who had dismissed me weeks earlier now looked at me with a mix of guilt and awe. I took a seat near the head of the table, my posture relaxed but deliberate. This time, I wasn't invisible. Greg cleared his throat and began. "We owe Claire everything. Without her, we wouldn't have made it through this. She rebuilt what we destroyed, fixed what we broke, and saved this company from itself." His voice grew firmer as he turned to the executives. "If there's one thing we should take away from this, it's that cutting corners doesn't work. Neither does undervaluing the people who keep this place running." There was a long pause before the CEO spoke, his tone unusually subdued. "Claire, on behalf of everyone here, I want to apologize. What happened to you was wrong, and we're sorry for how it was handled. We hope you'll consider staying on, not just as an employee, but as a leader. You've earned it." I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of their words sink in. For a moment, I considered saying yes. Staying would mean reclaiming my place, proving once and for all that I belonged at the top. But something inside me resisted. Revenge had been satisfying, justice even more so, but neither could fill the void left by years of being taken for granted. "No," I said simply, meeting their stunned expressions with calm resolve. "I appreciate the offer, but my chapter here is over. I gave you 6 years of my life, and you threw it away without a second thought. That trust is gone, and no title or paycheck can bring it back. The room fell silent. Greg looked heartbroken, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Finally, the CEO nodded, resignation etched across his face. We understand, and we won't stop you if this is what you truly want. I stood up, gathering my things. Before leaving, I turned to them one last time. You'll survive this, but only if you learn from it. Value your people. Respect their expertise. Don't wait until it's too late to realize what you have. As I walked out of the building for the final time, I felt lighter than I had in years. There was no bitterness, no lingering resentment, just peace. Arcadia wasn't my problem anymore. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I'd face them on my own terms, free from the shadows of the past. Later that evening, as I sat in my apartment watching the sunset, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Greg. Asterisk, you changed us, Claire. Thank you. Asterisk. I smiled faintly, setting the phone aside. Maybe I hadn't gotten the recognition I deserved when I needed it most, but in the end, I'd done something far more important. I'd reminded them why they should never underestimate someone like me again. And that was enough.